Hey guys, Weep here. Welcome back to another video by Variety MMOs. In today's video, we're going to be covering the beginner's guide to Berserker in Lost Ark. So in today's video, we're going to talk a little bit about what the Berserker does. We're going to talk a little bit about the difficulty and just the general gameplay of the Berserker. We're also going to go and have a look at every one of the Berserker's abilities so you can get a feel for whether or not this class is for you. Once we've done that, we're going to move on and have a look at a leveling build. So this build will help you level really smoothly in Lost Ark, and will help you save those crucial hours as while you're trying to level up to 50, because as we know, everybody likes to be nice and competitive. Once we've looked at a general leveling AoE build, we're going to go ahead and look at an endgame PvE build. The purpose of this build will be to quickly destroy mobs in AoE packs and slightly bigger bosses that spawn in things such as cubes and chaos dungeons, in which you need to be farming regularly to get the items required to successfully raid in Lost Ark. After you've watched this video, you should have a solid understanding of all the basics of the Berserker and what you need to do to get to endgame and successfully play this character. So let's have a look at the Berserker's abilities. Now, before we start looking at them, please keep in mind you can only have 8 ability slots at one time, so you'll never be using every ability once, so it's not as overwhelming as you might first imagine. So first we have Double Slash, which is basically just a slash of your sword. We have Assault Blade, which is basically another slash of your sword. You have Crime Hazard, which will jump and slam down on the enemy. You have Finishing Strike or Execute, which will do a lot of damage to the boss, and it is better to use it when they're lower HP and hit them in the back. Shoulder Charge later on when you have talents. Shoulder Charge is going to be used as a movement ability, and it's going to give you a shield. Whirlwind is going to be your bread and butter AoE ability that you're going to be using alongside Power Break. Power Break is an early ability. It does okay damage, but it's not something that scales very well, so you're not going to use it in the end of the game. And Tempest Slash. So Tempest Slash is the ability you're going to be using alongside Whirlwind. So let's spawn some mobs and have a look at them. We will not use our Awakening skill or our Berserk mode because those are something we can look at a little bit later. So here we have the General Slash. Doesn't really do a lot of damage. Another General Slash. Jump up. Here is your Execute, as you can see, is going to do a lot of damage. Your Shield Charge, which will give you shield and allow you to move. Your Whirlwind, which is what you're going to be using on a majority of mobs while leveling up. Power Break, which does a little bit of damage. And then we're going to use Tempest Slash. So those are your basic abilities, and these are the abilities that you're going to unlock first in Lost Ark. So let's go and have a look at the slightly higher level abilities. Okay, so the next set of abilities are Mountain Crash. It's basically an AoE ability that stuns enemies. You have Diving Slash, which will jump and slash down on the enemies. You have Hellblade, which you kind of stab into the ground and do a lot of damage. We'll look at that in a moment. We have Chainsword, which is just basically another single chain blade effect. Not something I really use. Same with Windblade. It kind of dashes you across and can do some bleeding, but it's not something I really use either. Maelstrom hits the ground, does a bit of damage. Strike Wave, big AoE ability, something you have to be using regularly. And Red Dust, which can be used depending on the build. So let's spawn some monsters and have a look at them. And now there is 2 more abilities we've yet to look at. Swordstorm and Aura Blade and Berserk Fury. So let's reset the cooldowns. So the 2 final abilities you're going to get while leveling up. Nice big AoE. And kind of like a sword strike that goes across the screen. And your other V key, your other awakening, will be this. as you can see, it's kind of like an Excalibur. It's very sick and does a high end of damage. Okay, so now that we've looked at the abilities that exist for the Berserker class, let's go and have a look at the recommended build that I use for leveling. This leveling build will be more aimed at abilities that can be used at a lower level, because it's kind of pointless having a leveling build that you can't use until you're almost leveled, because some of your abilities, your most powerful abilities, will unlock at level 40, for example, but you're done leveling at level 50. So let's go and have a look at that. So now that we have looked at the abilities for the Berserker, and we have gone and looked at a leveling build, now let's look at the build that you're going to be using on endgame AoE PvE. So this build is going to be a general AoE. It's not really designed to take on bosses, but it can take on average size bosses. The stats you're going to be used for this at 60, 20, 20 will be spec, crit, and agility. This is so you can do more damage in your ultimate mode, have a bit of crit, and have some skill cooldowns. The biggest thing with the Berserker, in my opinion, is that your cast timers and your cooldown on your skills are a little bit too long for my liking, and sometimes if you use them more quickly, you're going to run out of cooldowns. Okay, so the first thing we're going to look at is the imprints that we're running. So if we click the Z key now, instead we are now running darkness mode, which will give us 15% more movement speed, 15% more attack speed, and damage to the enemy increased by 18%, and all damage taken by enemies 65% less. Now this sounds all good, but just keep in mind that your HP bar is limited and you cannot heal any higher. So when you're running around, you could potentially get one shot by bosses, because even though you take 65% less damage, your HP pool is significantly less. You're going to want to be careful. So sometimes you're going to be running low on HP and you're going to worry. So what you're going to want to do is click X, and you can get out of this mode back to normal mode. You'll heal up, but you'll also get a timer before you can go back into Berserk mode. So what we can do is we can easily get rid of that and charge back up. So what we're going to do is have a look at the abilities. So we have Shoulder Charge. We have Shoulder Charge is going to give us our shield. Whirlwind is going to basically do AoE damage. The Tempest is going to do more AoE damage alongside the Whirlwind. The Final Strike, or Execute, will be used on bosses behind their back, which is going to do a staggering amount of damage. Mountain Crush, it's mostly used for making mobs just kind of stay still, so they don't do damage to you. Your Hellblade is now going to do a lot more damage because it has more points allocated to it. Strike Wave is your basically big AoE high damage, and same with Sword Storm. For this build, I like to focus on Finish Strike, but you can change out Finish Strike and put more abilities into Strike Wave if you wish. If you do this, Strike Wave will do a lot more damage, so you'll be more AoE, but you won't be quite as strong, because without finishing Strike, the boss is just going to take that little bit extra longer to kill. If you are strong enough though, you can just, with the Berserker, you can wipe out the bosses without needing a single target ability. So if you really are that powerful, you can relegate Finish Strike or Execute to the side for the time being. So let's spawn a couple named mobs and start using the abilities. So one of the abilities I don't believe I've shown so far is your Chain of Vengeance. So this is kind of like your Awakening ability. So if you go up and just click V, as you can see, that does a lot of damage. If I swap these out and go all the way down here and put on Berserker Fury, you also have another ability. While this does look cool, it does a lot of damage, I'm not so sure it's quite as effective as the chains, because your class is kind of primarily focused on AoE. So let's change that back to Chain of Vengeance, and let's spawn in some mobs. Okay, so let's go into Ultimate Mode. AoE, another AoE, to group up, and now you execute. Stun them. Hellblade. Now that they're close in the Hellblade, you follow up by Strike Wave. So as you can see, it's a pretty nice combo of 2 AoEs, an execute, a stun, and then 3 abilities after it. So let's do that one more time with a couple more mobs. to lure them all together, which is pretty quick. Get behind, execute, or you can skip the execute altogether, spawn some more in. Stun lock them all. Kill a blade. Knock them down. Followed up by Strike Wave. So as you can see, it's a nice, easy combo to remember, which is why I was saying earlier that this class is definitely a 1 difficulty, because it doesn't really require anything amazing, like dodging mechanics, getting behind the enemy too regularly. It's just kind of nice AoE abilities. And if anybody was new to this game or just looking for a casual type game style where they could level up quickly, you know, get a taste of the game without stressing too much about, you know, maximizing and grinding, Berserker is definitely the class that I would recommend. One thing I'm not sure if I mentioned is that because you're running this ability, you can use Dark Rush as many times as you want. Usually, if you use this ability, it would instantly knock you out of full mode, but now that you are in Dark Rush mode, you can use it as many times as you want for a nice damage burst. Okay, so that covers all the basics you need for the Berserker for Lost Ark. Hopefully this video has helped you decide whether or not this class is for you, and helped you go through the general PvE content quickly, so you can get to the content that many people desire, that is raids. Thanks for watching, guys. Peace.